you're ready to go.
Good afternoon, everybody. We thank you so much for joining us. My name is Nathan Corley. I'm the Director of Special Projects with the Louisiana Department of Education. And I'm here this afternoon to moderate a panel discussion with some people who know a whole lot more than me about our STEM workforce and its future here in Louisiana. So I'd like to start by introducing our panelists, and then we'll get started with the discussion. We have Mr. Greg Bowser, the President and CEO of the Louisiana Chemical Association, Mr. Jerry Liebold, Senior Vice President and General Manager of the Geismar site for BASF, Mr. Michael Schaefer, the Director of Enterprise Sales for Southern Link Altus, and Mr. Tom Ure, the Chief Operating Officer for Cornerstone Chemical. Again, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. I know that our participants are going to get a lot out of this, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. To let our audience know, the plan this afternoon, I have some questions prepared for us to discuss, but as questions come to you, feel free to drop those in the chat and we'll try to get to your specific questions as well. To start, I'd like to hear from any of you how COVID and its impacts have affected recruiting and hiring for your industry, and are there any new expectations of job candidates as a result of that? So gentlemen, whenever you feel free to jump in and discuss.
Well, I'll start it off, Nathan. And I obviously can't speak for every company, but what I will say is that the obvious impact is that for most companies, the initial interview is no longer an in-person interview. As expected, interviews are being conducted more frequently over phone and conference calls. As such, I think candidates have to expect that a more thorough approach to the interviewing process is going to take place. Hiring managers will likely require candidates to be interviewed by more than one person during the process, which in some cases may not be too far from what was normal, but it needs to be expected going forward. I think they can expect that recruiting and hiring managers would dig deeper into behavioral situations to understand their past experiences, and candidates should be expected to bring more detailed answers to regarding their experience during the interview process.
I think to add on to that, because I would agree with, certainly what Mike said. It's just a reality. You can't bring in people and then have a full day and a panel type of discussions that you normally would. When I think about the other expectations, it's not only the hiring, but it's those immediate days after. Normally you'd have somebody come to the site and here's the whole team, and you go out to lunch and you walk everybody around and meet face to face and shake a hand, and there's your office space, and here's where you go. It's very different now. And so you have to be reliant that person will be taking the initiative to, initial discussions, reach out afterwards, set follow-up meetings with the team members, introduce themselves. They can't be waiting for somebody to come and meet them. They're going to have to be much more proactive in reaching out to other members of staff and introduce themselves and really integrate through a management of change process. They're going to have to take a leading position rather than hope that somebody introduces them around.
Yeah, and Tom, if you don't mind, I'll jump right onto that, build a little bit. I found it interesting this past year with the coaching for those that are going to be interviewed. We're finding that there's a little different approach. You can't be looking away from the camera. We have to train those, and it's really true. We laugh about it a little bit, but it's really true. So the approach of coaching and getting those that are getting ready to be interviewed ready for that interview is a little different. So we found that to be a learning. But I will tell you this: the learning for us is many of these earlier in career folks are very good at technology. So they're using the existing tools like Microsoft Teams and Zoom and WebEx to do this. So I think that's been very good. I will tell you, for us, this was an opportunity for us to extend those tools to the orientation process and the onboarding process. So we're able to do 12 just this past year, that way, completely virtual. But to Tom's point, once they come to the site and they're really starting their onboarding in person, it takes a lot more of being able to pick up that phone and reach out and connect to build those bridges with their future teammates.
You know, Jerry and Tom, just to add to that, one of the things that we're hearing from our guys is because a number of the internships didn't happen when they were supposed to. I think that has impacted the way the applicant interacts with the company as well. Because normally you'd have had those guys going through internships and being familiar with some chemical facilities and knowing what to expect and what not to expect. But it looks like that has impacted them to a little degree as well.
Yep. You know, if I took this too and I flipped it to a positive, what it is doing is it also opens us up now to thinking about, right, different ways of working. So typically we all grew up in manufacturing and we would all scoff, oh, there's absolutely no way you could do any part of this job without being in the plant, being in the office, and have everybody together. So it has taught an old dog a new trick, I would say, is that people can be effective. And so what it does is also opens us up to candidates that maybe we wouldn't have been so open to consider before, whether that's part-time work in a different geographical location, somebody that just can't commit today. It has made us think differently about and expanding the pool of candidates and very qualified candidates that for one reason may not be able to pop into the plant this year or this month.
Yeah, and I think, Tom, to that bill just slightly, I think it really opened my eyes. Again, I'm a little longer in the tooth on career, right? I'm not early in career. And we'll laugh about it a little bit. I lost a bet about that, about virtual work and how effective it would be. And it was extremely effective. And we were educated quite quickly by these earlier in career folks on utilizing these tools and how it can be really effective. But it also leads into what are we looking for these future team members, and they need to be good with technology. And what we're finding is they are, and they're really helping us move forward more quickly with the advancement and use of those tools for things like, you know, troubleshooting. But again, it's not the traditional, what I would call when I started, operator. It's really, you know, troubleshooting, people that are really inclusive, able to reach out and work in a team environment, whether it's remote and then in person and kind of hybrid schedules. So it's really been quite a learning experience in the course of a year.
Yeah, and I think for me, then the last piece on that is where's the watch outs? You know, if I reflect over time, you have a new candidate and a new hire and a new person coming in to work with you, you start building those relationships right away. And as you develop those relationships over time, you start building teams, you start building people together. And, you know, you can show your vulnerabilities. You can help each other out of issues. And if there's personal problems, again, you develop a relationship. And so how do you develop a relationship in a personal world as opposed to new hires treating us more transactional? Hey, got a job, making a paycheck, I like working with you, but I maintain an entire network outside that you're not part of. So I think the also watch out is how do we prevent significant turnover working in this virtual world, because we don't necessarily have the same level of embedded relationships as we did in the past. And that is as much on the employer to create this environment as it is the candidate that comes in and works with us.
Anybody else have anything they want to add on that topic before we move on? Thank you all. So we had a question come in from the audience that really segues well into one of our other questions. But before we get to that, I do want to introduce one more panelist, Mr. Bill Bradley. He and I were actually in another meeting right before this, and it took him he had to stay a little longer than I did.
But, sorry about that, but I've joined now, Nathan. Thanks.
Oh, yes, sir. It's Mr. Bill Bradley is a technology and leadership advisor, and he's a retired chief information officer. So again, we're very glad to have you and the expertise you can bring to this panel.
Thank you.
So the question that came in from the audience was, will there be an opportunity for internships to resume in the future? And then I also want to go ahead and mention a question that I had written down ahead of time. High schools are increasingly interested in internships and apprenticeships for their students. And maybe you've heard about the new Fast Forward program that's gotten a lot of buzz in the media lately. That's part of that as well. What advice would you give to leaders as they seek out those opportunities for their students?
I'll take a shot at it. Just being part of a trade association and talking to our managers, I would suggest that they start earlier than normal. These internships tend to fill up, but again, you need to start earlier and have really great communication skills, because to even get through that process, you're going to have to do a lot of things remotely, because there's limited number of people that have access to the facilities themselves. And so I think that's going to be the big things I would tell them to do is you have to start early and be able to use the technology that's before you, because that's really how you're going to get it done early on.
I think you're right. And, from our perspective here at Southern Lincoln Altice, we do intend to continue with our plans for summer internships. And we would encourage, what you just said, to get there early, hit our website and go ahead and sign up, pretty quickly, which is, AlticeUSAcareers.com. Going back to something you said earlier, Tom, that I think is important here too, and it's, a level of communication. What leaders should, be prepared for is making sure that there's an open line of communication. I think you guys kind of hit the nail on the head. This virtual world is going to require these students, interns, apprentices, to be more open with communication. They're going to have to, have guidance. So, as a recommendation, mentorship programs would probably be better. I know some internships have them, some don't. But I think in this environment, having a go-to person, a single point of contact that intern or that student could reach out to say, hey, this is where I am and this is what I need, I think will definitely have an impact.
And to that point, what I think this virtual environment's taught us is that internships are no longer limited to a few people, right, that can sign up and come to work full time during the summer. I think what this has taught us, whether it's the mentorships that Mike has brought up, or the other programs that are out there, small opportunities like job shadowing, how to make the most, right, of your in-person. But I also think it opens it up to more virtual internships and apprenticeships and mentorships that, hey, can I just talk to you all, right? Can I talk to the leaders? Can you show me what's going on? Can I meet that mechanic or instrument engineer? Can I meet? Because as at least provide some insights. And so leaders taking advantage of contacting us in industry and say, hey, I've got 3 people or 4 people that would just like to know, how did you get to where you wanted, where you got to? Or, hey, can you appear on class and tell us? I think it's gotten us a whole lot more comfortable with these platforms to allow us to meet and impact more people for short term than it is just maybe having 10 or 12 people for a couple of weeks during the summer. I think it's opened up more opportunities rather than reduce the total sum.
Yeah, definitely remove geography as a boundary, but as a couple of you already said, it increased the importance of communication. It was true before, it's even more true now.
Great. Anybody else have anything they want to add about internships or taking steps to secure those for students?
Yeah, I think one thing that we find, and it's really across, everybody's on this panel, but in the industry, we're more than willing, and we have many of our team members that are willing to come out and give career talks or even entertain the job shadowing. It just takes that reach out to have a request. And if we have people that don't know who to contact, they can go through their counselors at school, but even, for us here at BASF, our PCC is a great contact, right? So the community colleges many times have great contacts into business, and they can say, hey, BASF, we have this interest. Do you have anybody that could help us out? And I will tell you, it's from my experience, almost 100% of the time, someone in the industry were able to step up and offer support and help in that regard. So just don't, I would say, don't be afraid to raise your hand and ask, even if you don't know.
And Jerry, I think that's a valid point. And I think that kind of brings an element I don't know we've touched on just yet, which is social media. From a business perspective, today, LinkedIn.com is a great place. If you don't know where to link out to, at least reach out into an organization and say, I'm trying to make a connection with you, and can you put me in contact with the right group?
Yep, and that's where I think a lot of the efforts, right, when you look at whether it's the education departments. It's a lot of times we find out with teachers is I don't even know where to go to and where to start. So the more we can bring out, even through LCA with Greg, if there's these central people that everybody can say, hey, I'm looking, can you help me start? It's no different with LaSTEM, right? It's really about how do we connect all the dots. And so the teacher who's in that classroom looking at these students answering questions, where do you go for resources? And that's where I think more than anything, we all want to communicate today. If there are teachers, if there's students, if there's educators and they just need help, we're here. And, reaching out to any of us, we can get the ball moving.
Yeah, just one last thing to build on that. Many times we're very interested in, is there a demographic or a group of students that are kind of left behind? And it comes to mind, Greg, with the recent, TJC group and the effort to take a look at maybe those students that aren't quite ready to go right into a community college or into college, but they just need an opportunity. And many of us, like BSF, we're very willing to give those individuals, those students, an opportunity to come in and maybe work 2 weeks as a mechanic, maybe 2 weeks job shadow with a welder and go through those things. But we're open to creative ideas to really help have a positive impact, in our local community. And I know that's pretty much true up and down the river.
Yeah, we've seen it from a lot of our members that they really want, it's part of their effort to reach out to their local communities and and it does a number of things. It gives kids a head start as to what we do and maybe give them an idea of what they want to do long term. But the other thing is it gives them a real sense of appreciation for what the company really does. They see them, they don't really know, there's really no access to get in, but this gives them a chance to see what they really do. And some of them, may inspire them to go on to go to P-Tech school. And they want to go to get a P-Tech degree. That's the kind of thing that this mentoring and the kind of inviting them in, that's what it'll do for both sides.
Yeah, and it also helps the parents or caregivers. Because again, because of the manufacturing environment, sometimes people don't know what happens behind the fence. And
Right.
so, companies have had good programs where they bring teachers in and externships, right, to help see what goes on so they can translate that. Talking to parents and saying, work in manufacturing is a great career. It's a great job. So we continue to work, but we always have to do more to demystify manufacturing and really help connect what you're learning in school to how this can apply into the workforce, right? Because even having a teenage son, it's like, why do I need to know that, right?
Yeah.
How is this going to help me? And right, it's explaining, well, this is why you learn this in your math class, or this is what you learn in some other class, and this is how you can turn that knowledge into a skilled trade. So it takes a lot of reinforcement from the caregivers as well to help connect the dots. And so we got to make sure we don't lose them in these discussions as well.
That's a great point. I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Anybody else have something they want to add? So I will mention that down in our Q&A section, we had one of our CTE folks from Tangipahoa Parish mention that they're looking for advisory board members for their programs. And so would it be the same sort of thing? Just reach out any way you can, or how would folks go about finding people who are willing to just help advise their programs as they're moving forward? And if you're interested in Tangipahoa specifically, she did drop her email address in the Q&A.
Well, I tell you, if she will send me a note at greg@lca.org, greg@lca.org, and a little note on it, and we can get her in touch with some of these guys who have programs and direct her in the right direction, people that are close enough to where they are to get the information and to get inside and get what they need.
Thank you very much. Audience, just as a reminder, as we move on through these next questions, if you have any questions yourself, please, you're not going to have an easier opportunity to get in touch with this much experience in the STEM field at one time. So drop those questions in.
Yeah, so if they don't know who to talk to, right, I was just reminded that, the Chamber of Commerce in your local area is also a great contact. Mm-hmm. If you don't know, reach out. They can usually head you in the right direction.
Excellent. So we've touched on this a little bit with our first question, but there are particular skill sets that students need as they transition from high school to your industry. And some of those are more important now than they ever have been before because of COVID and the lasting effects there. What can schools do to build the skills kids need to move from high school into your industry? I'll save the tough one for last.
Yeah, I mean, oh, go ahead, Mike, sorry.
No, go ahead, Tom. I'll wait. Go ahead.
Yeah. So what can they do to help build the skill sets is, I'll go back to one of the other comments is having the teachers get more familiar with our industry and what we're doing and actually experiencing firsthand what we do each day. What will help, because again, it puts it in the context, right? Group projects, working together, multidiscipline, multi-generational communications. Understanding that it's okay to admit when you don't know something and go and ask. And I think, again, reflecting on my own kids and sometimes the disconnect to STEM education, STEM is hard. I don't want to do that. I'll never be able to learn that. And why does it matter and why does it bother? Right? Those are the kind of questions. And so support of programs such as, building computers, building robots, Lego systems. A lot of these things will help kids, because sometimes kids are just afraid of science because they think it's hard. And so, a lot of it is just demystifying it, I'd say, Nathan, and working closer to the teachers to help them apply it. I think will give them the insight. Right.
So on the topic of demystifying, a question just rolled in. How can teachers get plugged in to do job shadowing?
Yep. No, it's great. Again, there's programs that my good buddy there, Jerry's done. I've done in the past. Jerry's done in the past. And again, reach the school districts, right? And that's where us as industry having great working relationships, whether it's Ascension Parish, whether it's Jefferson or other parishes. It's really about connecting and then just asking. I mean, all of us want the same thing. We all have a workforce that we need in the future, and the workforce for Louisiana is in the schools today. So there's a very strong vested interest in reaching out to these schools and helping. So again, I'd say it's the same with Greg. If there's teachers or there are people that, hey, I want to get into the units and I want to get into manufacturing, whether it's reaching through the Chamber of Commerce, as Jerry had mentioned, or reaching to Greg through LCA, we're here ready to help. But we've also can't all the time reach out and say, do you want this? It's great if we have those active educators who say, we want this, please do it. You're at the front of the line, and you're the ones that are going to get the support.
Well, I'd second what Tom just said, and to directly answer that question that came in, from my perspective, our industry, what I would recommend is that they reach out to the SCTE, which is the Society of Cable, Telecommunications and Engineers. It's a organization that is, that is focused on skill sets, training, and things of that nature for engineers and people who are going to be working in the telecommunications industry, specifically with MSOs. And they would be more than happy to provide, some insight to teachers, counselors, advisors that would help those students to understand, well, what's it actually going to take to start something in that field or similar, if that makes any sense.
One of the things that we have by reaching out to LCA that's unique is that we can guide you with respect to the chemical facilities themselves, but we also represent the vendors and suppliers who do work in the chemical industry, who build plants, who fix things in plants. And so we can reach directly to either group to give you the kind of background and information that you really need to have to make a decision as to long-term what your career wants to be. I think that's the unique thing about when you're reaching out to us here at LCA.
Nathan, to go back to the original question, I think some things that would probably help with students is, as we teach these students the skills that they need from STEM, they also need other skill sets to come into play for that. One is persistence and patience. We're not going to get there overnight. Now, a lot of the individuals that are on this call today started started at point A and ended up at point Z in terms of their career, and that knowledge does not come very quickly. It requires that they be students, that they actually do the work. I had a mentor that used to tell me all the time, the only place you're ever going to find success before work is in a dictionary. It's important that we continue to teach the students that they have to be students, they have to study, and they have to be hungry for the information that these gentlemen are so willing to provide.
One thing I'd add about STEM is while it's never too late to start down a STEM path, the sooner you start, the more successful you'll be. And the things that you can do early on, even in elementary and pre-K, around the same type of platforms that Tom talked about, robotics and Lego, those are available at all ages. So the sooner you get started, we already have enough data that shows that the more likely you'll be successful if you started early.
Yeah. One of the things, Nathan, I'll just add on is that STEM's important and you need to teach them all those skills. But somewhere in there, I would suggest to the educators and the caregivers, the soft skills need to be incorporated in there so that they understand, what some things mean and why you have to have them along with the STEM knowledge. And I think that's vitally important that gets put in somehow.
Yeah, Greg, I'll just jump in on that one. I mean, you and I both for a pass through sports, right? We know the value of team. And I think it's, these days anymore you see on TV, right? The one that scores the touchdown is pounding their chest, me. But we know in our industry and in work, it's about the team being a good team member. So we do try to take a look at and work with teachers about how to build and get them used to that team environment. We also, some keywords I just wrote down, that teamwork, inclusion, curiosity, creativity, and get rid of this fear of failure, right? We like to say failure, it's not failure, you just eliminated a possibility, right? One of the possible solutions, so move on to the next. And I think earlier that these students were able to learn that, the more successful they'll be, joining one of our teams.
Yeah, and then initiative, right? Yeah, we go through different generations, and there's generations where you grow up as a kid and you left the house and you rode your bike and you took care of everything. You managed yourself all day and you came home because it was dinner time, right? You move through generations there where you've got, well, don't worry about this. We'll take care of this. We'll take care of that. So it's really making sure that the generations that come out show the initiative, because as I think we all agree, nobody's going to show up on your door, knock and say, oh, guess what? Here's your brand new job. You've earned it for being you, right? You got to work really hard at whatever you want to be successful at. You got to work really hard, and it's really helping, instill the work ethic, go get it. It's up to you. No one's going to just take care of you because you're you. You got to work hard.
That's an excellent point, Tom. I think it's going to be a lot harder to teach kids today because of the fact that one of the things that the virus has taught us, that people working at home, you're not in the same room all the time. So it's harder to develop those personal team. Jerry, you mentioned those teamwork building relationships because you're not there. You're working separate.
All right, guys, we have less than a minute left. We had one more question come in from the audience. It says, realistically, how likely are industrial employers to hire an 18-year-old who completes a tech diploma during high school? And before you answer, I just want to point out that in Louisiana, to complete that tech diploma, they do earn an IBC, an industry-based credential prior to completing the diploma.
Sure. No, we see it here at BSF with our contractors. I'll say more than likely getting into a contractor position that comes into support and work here at the plant. I'll say, though, that to come in to be an operator, as an example, getting that P-Tech degree would be that next step. But that is not uncommon with those other contractors that we use and are nested here, every day.
Yep. And I can just add that, I think the greatest thing that we offer the state is for, from an educational perspective, is you don't have to have a PhD in something or guaranteed invested 8 years in higher education to get a well job. When I think of the leaders of industry, right, that we have in this state, most of them started right with a high school education degree and then built up craft skills. So I don't know of any other industry that you can start as directly high school and get in through any of our crafts and grow and develop, and whether it's getting additional education or additional schooling to achieve an incredible level of a career, I think we offer something that no other industry can. But it takes a lot of work, it takes dedication, and you always still have to learn. Learning never stops, but it doesn't have to be necessarily all through the collegiate ranks.
Well, I'd say Tom hit the nail on the head. I think, from me, early on, I got the advice from a mentor that, basically, what I was told is if you feel like you've got 80% of what the company is looking for, when you look at the job description versus your skill set and your resume, take a shot, and make up with the rest of it with that hunger, that desire, that work ethic to say that I want to do this. I think that will help you stand out above all else as a company and a hiring manager standing there looking at the people in front of me saying, hey, pick me, I want that job. I think that, that work ethic, that desire, that burning desire to really want to do that. And if you can articulate that to the people who are making those decisions, I think you get your shot.
Well, gentlemen, I wish we had all afternoon, but unfortunately we do not. On behalf of our entire audience and everybody at the LDOE and across the state helping our students, thank you very much for the time you've given us and the time you continue to give to our kids and just to our state. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Thank you.